All right, good morning. So at some point, we're going to begin this podcast without technical difficulties. I don't know, it may take a year, to figure out how to do that, but by gosh, that is my goal. We will learn how to do it without starting with technical difficulties. So for those of you that are joining us this morning, please excuse that. I'm having some internet issues this morning. So if I go away, then Julia will take over for me, and that will be just fine. So welcome to the rope report. This is number nine. For those of you who are young, that does have something to do with the Beatles. And today we are with Dayna Mooney, who is the chair of the Canadian County Moms for Liberty chapter. And Dayna has been very involved in education and doing a lot of different research on different topics. And so she's going to talk to us this morning about smart cities. Is that what it is, Dayna?
Yes, ma'am.
Welcome. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Dealing with technical difficulties.
Technology is fun.
Yes, it works when you want it to, and it doesn't sometimes when you want it to. So who knows? So what made you decide you were going to start looking into smart cities?
Well, I've heard off and on for several months now about smart cities, 15-minute cities, things of that nature. But a couple months ago, I went to my first city council meeting and was given information, or they were discussing information about a conference that our mayor had gone to. And I decided to look that up. A friend and I were looking into the agenda, and it had everything to do with smart cities and your typical, like what we're seeing everywhere, DEI initiative, things of that nature. So at that point, I was just kind of brainstorming a little bit, thinking that if I can connect smart cities information to education, then it's something that I could share with parents. In Moms for Liberty, it has to be related to parental rights or education in some sort of way. So after that was established, then I started doing more and more research and came up with, a portion of what I'm going to talk about today. There's just so much of it to try to put in an hour podcast. So this is just kind of the tip of it. But for me, the focus is more on showing parents that these are all connected and just how much data they obtain on not only adults, but children that parents probably don't even realize.
Right. Well, part of what we were fighting back in the day when we were fighting Common Core was the data collection. It
Yep.
was unbelievable the
Mhm.
points of data that they wanted to take on children and by virtue the families, which we were screaming at the top of our lungs, and it all just sailed through. If they couldn't, I mean, they didn't necessarily put it through legislature, but they got a federal grant,
Mhm.
the ever so popular federal grant money that put the statewide longitudinal database into play, and I'm sure that is very instrumental in creating the smart cities and all the things that you're seeing
Mhm.
as a result of all
Yes.
that data collection.
Yes, and I think the things that parents and others have to keep in mind is anytime that they say smart cities, smart infrastructure, smart, you know, anything, the Great Reset, all these things have to do with smart cities, setting them up within their cities.
Right.
And smart education is one of those. If they have to be able to educate these children to become who they want them to be, to function in the smart city, or any of the other infrastructure that's going to be completed if it's not already starting in some of your cities. I noticed in ours with the water department, they went from manually kind of writing it down to entering numbers in something to now it's a mobile device that comes around and just scans your your water meter.
They've done that pretty much with everything anymore.
Yes.
Yeah, gas is the same way.
Yes.
Electric, we have smart meters,
Yes.
on our electric pole that then,
Mhm.
send all of that information back to the electric company, and not just, and people don't realize how connected we are, whether we want to be or not. Even if you got off of Facebook and all of social
Right.
media, the amount of information that just cameras on the road, pick up, is just ridiculous. So, do you want to just launch into your program?
Sure. So I just titled this Smart Cities Reset Education because reset is sort of a buzzword along with smart cities.
Yeah.
You might not always see it referred to as smart cities or 15-minute cities, or they'll include the word reset and other words that we'll discuss. So for this one, I just did it mainly for the definitions of a smart city. And then for those that are interested in the smart infrastructure, smart city just encompasses so many things. They will present it as it helps us be more sustainable. And they always present it as how it's better for people, how they're helping fight a problem. We'll kind of go through some of those other things that they discuss, but ultimately all these things also improve quality of life is another one. Being more efficient, to they'll talk about future generations, these types of things, but at the end of the day it's all to establish an ESG score, where everybody will have a personal ESG score that determines what you can and can't do, how much water you get in your home. I mean, I came across an article from the World Economic Foundation that talk about rationing water to people. I mean, these things are all over the place. You just have to know what to look for. So sustainable development is one I hear often.
All the time.
Yes. But smart infrastructure, again, is like we were talking about earlier with the smart meters and, all the ways that they're gathering information on you. That's how they generate data as well. So it all feeds into that ESG score.
Stop you just one quick second. What does ESG mean?
ESG, so you'll see it as economic, social, and governance. Like it's where they get all the information from. They get it from your environment, your social atmosphere, your economic. Anytime you fill out surveys about your income, your anything about your home life is taken into account with an ESG score. Social could be, who you hang out with, what type of groups you're involved in, even to your political affiliation, people that you vote for, how much energy you use, do you recycle, all these things they take to measure to put into your ESG score.
And in China, where they've developed this and preceded us, it's what your neighbor tells the government about you. Because if your neighbor tells on you for something and it's the government can verify that it's true, then your neighbor's credit score goes up. Isn't that a fun thing? And I think we all learned during COVID which neighbors not to trust.
That's right.
Well, and I think it's important to point out as well that, when you're dealing with anything like this, you're always told that it's for your good or it's for the good of society. Like you said something about, stopping our water or measuring out our water or whatever. Well, they're going to do that benevolently. The government will do that benevolently because
make sure
they
everyone
love
has
you.
water.
To make sure everybody has things, so just like with COVID, where you have to do this for everybody else's good. I mean, that was what they were testing the waters with, I believe, to see whether or not people were going to swallow the crap that they were trying to feed us, which is it's for your own good. And you have to do this to save your brother or neighbor or whatever it was. So I think it's important because I think people, before you get too deep into this, I think people they somehow believe that people want the best for them. And I'm sure in their family and, neighbors, that's one thing. Government doesn't want the best for you anymore. That we blew by that bus stop a long time ago. All of this is about control. Don't ever believe the government wants the best for you. Don't ever believe that. It's a bald-faced lie. Anything that they're telling you at this point is just to control you. And they believe that you're an idiot enough to believe that it's for your own good. Okay, I've said my piece. Sorry about that.
They have to sell it to you. I mean, they have to make it sound like it's the greatest thing ever, so you buy into it. And then by the time you realize that it's not what they said it was, it's almost too hard to get out. So the other thing I wanted to point out is this is a global situation where, if you'll notice up on here, it talks about United Nations. United Nations is huge in this, World Economic Foundation. Any of those global, kind of organizations that we hear a lot about are behind this push. So when you hear those people mentioned, and, kind of just is a red flag, I would think. So, but, we'll talk about some buzzwords as well. So this is just kind of a compilation of different articles and programs that have come out in the news. You'll see in the middle, a reset of public education, Tulsa County reset program. Tulsa and Oklahoma City are both in process, and in some ways already smart cities. They're just adding to it. So many people probably don't realize that or see those things yet, but they are there and they're coming if they're not already. So the other thing I want to say is some of these slides, I've learned a lot from Julianne Romanello, from watching her in Smart Cities. And so there's tons more information that people can find by finding her on Facebook and YouTube. But
you might even mention why it's a good thing that you learned this from Julianne. What was her background?
Well, Julianne is from Tulsa, or around Tulsa. and she was a college professor. And I forget what she was a professor of at the college, but she has spent a lot of time into going back and looking through all these things. And I apologize, I don't remember how she got started, but I've watched many of her videos and follow her. But other than that, I'm not familiar with the beginning. So, but I do know that she was a professor, and this kind of how she started seeing all these things and getting involved in the smart cities.
I think Jenny may be frozen.
Is she?
Why don't you go on to the next slide? Yeah.
So this one I just added in because I wanted to show people the dates on them to show them how long this has been in process. On one of these, you'll see May 1st, 1974. And then on another one, you'll see 2012. So they adopted looks like an additional resolution was adopted on December 21st, 2012. So, excuse me. So, this has been in the works for quite some time. And it's really gone unnoticed, I think, for a lot of people.
It was the same way with Common Core.
Right.
They put that in law and got that all going without telling anybody about what that was about. There was nothing they just literally.
They put it in on page 30 of a 35-page bill, one line that put it in a bill entitled Teacher Incentive Pay.
Yeah, and they do it without so it's
Nobody knew what
surprise
Common Core was. And that's how they got it into law in the first place.
Which is why it's so important to go to state school board meetings and your own local school board meetings and your own local city council meetings so that you can try to catch this before it starts. Although I think it's a little late now.
Yeah.
Well, but I think, the more people that are standing up and asking questions, it might kind of maybe slow it down. I don't know. I just don't know what it will take for more, to wake up and say, this is enough, especially when we kind of get into more about when they realize how much data is being collected on their children without their knowledge. So it's really
rationing their water, they'll get it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and under Obama, when he was going to destroy the coal industry, my thinking was, I thought, well, I really like electricity, but if it wakes people up, I'm good with that.
Yeah. Yes.
But so he stopped short of waking everybody up with that.
So this one is just another talking about more of the sustainable development. In the NIEO is the new International Economic Order. Again, these are all kind of on this global scale coming from the UN. They're actually the ones that created it. You'll hear about maybe have heard about Agenda 21, 2030 Agenda. Again, sustainable development is one they love to use. Transforming our world, transforming our schools, transforming is another one that they love to use. Economic growth, you'll hear all these things that they use to sell it to you. But really it's all about a smart city.
Right.
It just struck me. Don't you remember that one of the things about that Obama used to say constantly was change? Remember, it was that was his word, change. Well, and now in hindsight, even though many of us knew that well before he was elected and certainly didn't vote for him for that reason. He was the one that instituted so much of the Marxist agenda that we're struggling against, right now. And that was his change. And people somehow think in their heads, and I don't know why, that some of these words like sustainable and change and reset and, somehow these words are good. These words are not good.
Like
they're not
choice.
good.
Like school choice.
Yes, choice.
Which
exactly,
is not school choice.
Right.
Yes. So, and can more about on smart cities. So one of the things I wanted to note was in 2015, the U.S. Department of Transportation launched Smart City Challenge. or the Smart City Challenge, initiative to increase the focus on medium-sized cities and use of integrated data, technology, and innovation to address the stubborn urban challenges related to mobility. And then on another slide, you'll see the cities that applied for those for this challenge. And some of the other things to note is that they will talk about ensuring social equity. We think about how much they talk about equity. They're trying to like pound it in your heads, equitable outcomes, etc. They collect data everywhere. Everything that we do is data. Data is the new oil, as they say. It's just everything we do is being collected. And again, more things, they just want you to believe that they're solving problems, that it's focused on the people, it's about innovation and sustainable development. So this is a map of the DOT Smart City Challenge that I just mentioned. You will see Oklahoma City and Tulsa they did submit and were wanting to be part of the Smart City.
Look at Florida. Good grief.
Yes.
Yeah.
So from the ones that are highlighted in the blue were some of the finalists, that I guess won these grants, but there are many other grants out there that the cities can apply for that can help them move towards this smart city.
I want to point out something really quick, if you don't mind, because sure. Look at how, we always conservatives complain about the left and the right coast, right? Or the left and the left coast. Mm-hmm. Look at how the coastal cities, certainly are blue, but look at the ones that we tend to think of as Texas is blue, Florida is blue, Oklahoma is blue. I said this, I don't know how many hundreds of times, and Julia, you and I have run our mouths on this for years and years and years. Right. Oklahoma isn't a red state. People, Oklahoma isn't a red state.
We have a lot of lefties that ran as Republicans because that's how you win.
Yes.
That's their only principle is how to win.
That's exactly right. So if you think that you've moved here from the coast or you've moved here from someplace and you're going to get something better, if you don't come here and start screaming at our legislature as loud as you possibly can about what's going on here, you're going to end up in the same trash heap that you came from, because this is not getting any better here.
And look at this map. Okay, so Oklahoma is forever, the school choice cabal in Oklahoma is forever saying, oh, we want to be like Florida. Look at Florida. Please look at Florida.
Yeah. And Arizona.
One, Tennessee. All of these are moving right along in the smart city. And that's what the whole school choice thing is about, collecting data on all the kids that are currently not in government schools.
Yeah, getting them into the system. Yes.
Getting them into the system.
And you and I talked about that yesterday. Remember when we used to go to those P20 council meetings and we heard the guy say, well, we have to get data on homeschoolers. And that was in 2013 or 14.
Yeah, that was 2013.
So, so if you don't think homeschooling families that they're not out to get your data, they absolutely are.
Yep.
Yes. So oh, no, you're just fine. So the other thing I put in here was just the different phases that these will typically go into from start to finish. Again, understanding the problem and community needs, because, they want to help. So they're going to help solve the problems. And then, and then they go into, more of the collaboration. Collaboration is another one of those words that they use to make it sound so nice. And the experimentation, they want to try something. They want it. They're going to be a pilot city. They're going to try this in this section or not in this section or whatever. However they word it, that's how they start with phase 2. Phase 3 is, of course, implementing, and they evaluate the information that they've received from phase 2 as they implement it into your cities.
Right.
So, and it doesn't matter if you're a large city, small city, If you're in country of Oklahoma, it doesn't matter. This is coming in every city. Some of them just aren't as noticeable as others. So it's just something to be watching out for.
Yeah.
And this is just some of the buzzwords. These are just some of the 10. There's many, many more, but these are, if you can locate these, then, or you hear these, then these are some to definitely kind of perk your interest into whether or not your city is a smart city, or your local government, or, you know, it might start in your local government and then it expands to other businesses in town, or it just, every one of them is becoming a smart city. They talk about future use.
Look at number 6. Again, I don't know how many times I've screamed about public-private partnerships, and look at number 6, a model of collective systems alignment, collective impact, using shared language, metrics, goals, etc., especially concerned with public-private partnerships and community.
So every time we see the word community, it winds up being communism. So just you can guarantee that the way they're using the word community is a pretty word for communism. The collective controlled society that they want, they're going to call it a community.
Well, you could also equate the same for community schools.
Yes, I mean, exactly.
You know, we see this big push in Oklahoma for community schools. We're starting to see that already, where, you know, these, you know, we've got mental health in our schools. We've got medical practitioners coming into our schools. You know, I mean, so it's well on its way. So community is not, again, I think it's one of those words that they've altered the meaning of.
Right.
You know, exactly. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, transparency, accountability. They don't like it so much when you ask questions.
Right. So, you really don't. Dayna goes to all of the things in her city. She goes to the school board meetings. She goes to the city council meetings, and she always has questions, and they don't really appreciate that.
Yes, and if I can't go, then I always have somebody that can go in my place. You know, certainly if we need to speak at school board meetings, we certainly will. City council meetings, I don't know if it's like this everywhere, but for ours, when you get up, you have to not only give your name, but you have to give your address, which, you know,
that's
I'm not
ridiculous.
A fan of, but, you know.
That's intimidation tactics. If I were you, the next time you speak there, say, I would like to put on the record all of your addresses as well.
Yeah.
It's good for the goose.
You should be asking them those questions.
And, you know, when I start going to these, I just initially will go and just sit and watch, observe, see what's going on. You know, it helps me connect dots to other things that maybe I was already looking at, or, you know, and then just being able to like hear about the conference that our mayor went to. I probably would never have heard about that had I not gone to the city council meeting. So, you know, I always encourage people just to go, and, you know, look over the agenda, look, and, you know, just what you hear, what you see.
How much of this is going through?
Yes, and you'll probably learn so much more than you ever thought you would if you didn't go. So, I mean, these meetings are once a month, and I know that we go to a lot of meetings, but, you know, anybody can just go to a city council meeting, school board meeting, and they can learn about these things that are going on. All right, so smart education is really what I wanted to connect all of this to with the smart cities, because again, they can't have, if they have smart education, they got to have a way to train these children to be their little warriors, social justice warriors, to push their initiatives that they're pushing with smart cities. So, and so smart education is, if we think about how they've changed their teaching approach, you know, what type of lens are they teaching through in the schools, and how everything's gone to Chromebooks. I don't know very many schools that still have actual textbooks. The ones I do know that have classroom sets. You can't take them out, You can't do anything with them other than have them in class. Otherwise, their textbooks are online. So,
Wow.
um,
Which they can change at any moment.
mm-hmm. And there's just more focus, more drive for the technology, so that maybe parents may or may not see what's going on in their classrooms. They can't see the work that's being given. But if they do go in there to their child's program, whether it's Canvas or whoever their school uses, then they can see the actual assignments being given to the kids and review them and see what's for that particular unit. They talk about environmental issues, anything other than reading, writing, and arithmetic. They will teach them.
Yeah.
And data is collected from the time the students walk in the door until they leave to go home. Data for them is a huge portion of having a successful data system in education. So, and it's probably many things.
I'll have to leave. I'll go back and get some of the videos that we did on the P20 Council, which was established under Obama in Oklahoma by Mary Fallon and Janet Breesy, who was the Secretary of Education at the time. The P20 Council videos that we did on that, about how that was what the P20 Council was supposed to do, was to help create these longitudinal databases that all of the data from children would be going into in order to facilitate better sharing of information. And we did numerous videos about this in 13 and 14. And sadly, it's just kind of gone by the wayside. But, I'm very glad, and we're all very glad that you're, bringing attention to this again, because if we don't get our kids unhooked from this, especially up until the time they start driving,
it's going to be like in China, where
yes.
they cannot say the name of Jesus with someone standing within earshot because they might get arrested.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to. That's where this.
Or a ding on their social credit score.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or their bank account's frozen. They can't get any money out. Or
right.
I mean, there's a whole plethora of things that can happen if they don't comply.
Absolutely.
So this I just included because I wanted people to kind of see the connection of the school education system that's funded by our government, but in the middle is family education and what you're learning at home. But then within the city, education system, there's a disconnect, I feel like, between family, school, and city, because the values aren't seeming to line up. And it's not about backing up the parent anymore. Within many of our social emotional learning programs within the schools, every school has one. So it's just a matter of which one they decide to use. But in particular, these programs are all designed to show that what the school is teaching you or what the city is teaching you is superior to the family. And so if many of us have said, and maybe continue to say, money doesn't grow on trees. I heard that often from my grandparents, my parents, and I've said it to my own children. But in this particular program that's used, it tells the children that the parents are wrong and that we are causing emotional scarring to our children.
So putting a wedge between kids and their parents.
Yes. So as far as, the learning environments, there's learning environments everywhere that go from, it says the whole city. Well, we know where whole city comes from: whole school, whole community, whole child, that perspective. So, but it's not including, it's only including the family, the parents, if you agree with what they're saying, what they're teaching.
Right. So parents are not in charge of the child's culture.
Yes.
The government is.
So you're like stuck in the middle between what they call social education, when we learn within our communities, within our cities, and within the, wherever we go as a society, and then what they're getting at school, it doesn't match. So, depending on your family and your values, they might match, but there's some of us that it does not. So, and it's a hard place to be in, when your kids are learning it in all these places that they're supposed to be able to trust and that you're supposed to be able to trust. And it doesn't always come out that way. So, the more that people can keep an eye on their schools, the better. But at the same time, and knowing what your children are learning at school. I realize that every parent doesn't have the option to go up to the schools and sit and look at curriculum, but certainly reach out to maybe somebody that does. The schools likely won't release a copy to you to take home. That's a whole other issue. But so just be more mindful of what they are learning and what they're being taught, just in general, because it's probably not aligning with your family values.
Right.
Excuse me. So this is a education forum that I found from, it was in Belgium, I believe. But anyway, it was a conference that was in 2017, which was before COVID. So this has been in the works before COVID happened. Smart education, smart cities, and smart regions. So this has been here going on, trying to be implemented long before COVID. COVID, I think, like you were saying earlier, was probably just a trial run to see who was compliant and who wasn't, and what they would comply with.
Yep.
So, and I just notated just a couple of the couple bits of information that I found within this information. Again, talking about adjusting education to the expectations of smart cities and smart regions, challenges of a smart city, shaping smart education policies. So all the smart city policies and restrictions and all the things are helping to transform or shape the policies within our schools. Some of the policies that we're seeing are being changed because of these things, because they're trying to implement the smart city agenda. So
let's not forget, you said something earlier that I wanted to kind of jump on, but you were in the middle of something.
Oh, sorry.
You said the government does this. Well, or the government spends money on this. Well, the government only has the money that it forces out of our pockets. So all of this, I think we just need to make sure that we're saying over and over again, taxpayer funded, taxpayer funded, taxpayer funded, because they're using our dollars against us to manipulate us into a system where they have the control over not only our monetary resources, but our person, the autonomy over our person, and the autonomy over our family. And until people start understanding this, I see no hope, because there have to be enough of us that stand up and say, I'm not giving you one more red dime. You're not getting another dime of my money. You're way outside of the box of what you're trying, we've said taxes should be spent on. Taxes should be spent on local things like police and fire, national things like driving, like roads, so that we've got interstate transport.
To the degree that police and fire are doing the right thing, because trust me.
Oh, well, for sure. I don't know about the fire, but police are becoming militarized.
We're ready to step aside and let buildings be burned up, or jump in because someone wasn't complying with the stupid mask regulations. So, there's a degree that even at that point, the locals are just as bad. I know
that's true.
It's bad here. It's bad in Mustang.
Yeah, it's true.
Yukon.
So sorry about that, Dayna. I just wanted to make sure we get that. And honestly, all of us that understand this should be pounding that particular podium constantly, because people are too I was talking to somebody the other day, Fahrenheit 451. Michael and I were talking about this Fahrenheit 451, the book. We're in the middle of Fahrenheit 451 right now. If you haven't read it, you need to read it, because Huxley was an absolute visionary. We're all being entertained to the point that we're and drugged. I mean, and that's what was happening in Fahrenheit 451. They were being entertained and drugged, marijuana, being drugged to the point that they didn't care about anything that was going on around them. And that's how the government gains control. That's how authoritarians win, is by subjecting us to the entity which is in our own little mind, so that we're not paying attention to what's going on around us. And we've got to be pounding that podium constantly.
And it's personal. People always think it's it's somebody else. It's personal. They are coming for you if you don't comply or you don't do what they deem is the proper thing, which will be Antichrist. Trust me. That's the word.
In the end. Yep.
Excuse me. So this was just more information that I took from that particular education forum. Notice some buzzwords. We talked about sustainable environment that they put through all these smart cities. This is a charter of various milestones or policy measures that they use through all these. That excuse me. But just more talk about the smart cities, smart regions, of how these are all connected within the schools. These are policies that they are wanting implemented on a local level, not only in our local governments, but within our schools. Another thing that you may start hearing more about in regards to these is called robust equity. We started seeing that pop up in various bits of information that's coming out. So, excuse me. Yeah.
And I love the word stakeholders. That was one of the words that we love to hate back in Common Core days. That means the people that are going to make money off of your children. So, cha-ching.
Yes. Exactly.
And not only that, stakeholder is a Marxist word. So
yes, it is.
This is another excerpt from that same education forum where I just wanted to highlight some of the buzzwords that we try to get people to recognize that this is, this is happening. This is in your area. Learning within sustainable environment. We see that all the time on a city level and on a school level. Education for sustainability. See, they love that word, sustain. Environmentally conscious, it's all about the environment for them. They love the global warming push, that we hear.
No, it's climate change. Don't forget.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes. Thank you. Active citizenship and inclusion. We see in our schools digital citizenship, which, is part of the same push. So, and again, it's not citizenship like we think of citizenship. It's all more about data and gathering that information from people. Culture. Culture is different to many people, but if you don't agree with their version of culture, then, they try to cancel you or, do all the things that they can do to hurt you.
Not your actual culture that comes from your family, but the culture that they've created for you to be compliant to government.
Exactly. And this, I also talked about implementing a whole school approach. Again, talking about what we call WISC, whole school, whole child, whole community. That's something that, we could certainly dive in at another time, but that's something else that they like to put into these diverse and inclusive education, whether they word it diversity, equity, and inclusion, diverse and inclusive, it's the same push. Yeah. Requiring schools to become community learning spaces, community schools, community, some of the stuff is right there. People just have to know what it means, and it doesn't mean probably what you think it means.
Right. And I want to point that out too. What is the push for community? Because I think people aren't going to get it until you understand the underlying structure for all of that. So why is this push for community? What is the push to have community schools? What is the push for this? They understand, and they, by that I mean they, the one world government cabal,
Stakeholders.
stakeholders, the Marxists understand that when you put people together in a group, it creates sheep, because just psychologically, people are much less likely to stand up for something outside the group think. They're less likely to stand up for their own perspective. They're less likely to even develop their own perspective if they're shoved together in a group like a bunch of sheep. I have sheep. I work with sheep every day. I understand how sheep work. If you separate one sheep from the group, they have no idea what they're doing, and they just sit and scream all day. That is it is the way it works. And unfortunately, people psychologically can be a lot like sheep when you put them into a community where they're interacting as one big group. It keeps people from standing up for themselves. It keeps people from developing diverse opinions. It keeps people from expressing those diverse opinions. This is why they push community. So I hope once you understand the reason why they're doing it, you can say to yourself, well, now I see it, I'm not going to be a part of that, because that's what we need to do, is reject all this stuff soundly. We're individualists. In America, we are individual. We are to have autonomy over our own persons. That's why this country was created. So please understand the difference between being individualist and being in community. We don't choose to be in community. We want to remain individuals.
And the community thing, they can pit this group against this group and this group against this group.
Excellent.
And they keep people fighting one another instead of going for the real enemy to us, which is the government,
Correct.
and the controllers, the stakeholders,
the authoritarians.
the authoritarians. Yeah. Okay. We're
All right. So more on the smart education and a smart city. So in order to prove the teaching quality and also the student's degree of understanding and be comfortable in the classroom, a smart classroom is suggested. Smart classroom, I just think of everything that they've switched over to Chromebooks. You seem like maybe you have less access to information that they're being given. And whether that's because you have to go somewhere to see the curriculum, it's not really posted anywhere. Some school districts will post textbook information on their websites for each grade level, but that doesn't tell you what they're working on in the classes. And textbooks, really, like we were talking earlier, aren't really used anymore except on websites. So anything that's being changed over to for technology purposes or digital, any of those things is part of a smart classroom, a smart school. Several pieces of information that can be collected from the classroom, accordingly as a level of the student's interest can be measured among other things like attendance, discipline, emotions, whether you complete work, your grades, etc., are all part of this data that they can collect. There are, kindergarten, pre-K, kindergarten, first grade classes, younger elementary, where it's something as simple as they walk in and choose a color for that day based on how they're feeling. And
that's true. I mean, that's exactly what's happening.
But those kids could be upset because their shoe's untied or their friend's not at school or, something really simple, but they'll manipulate it into something so much bigger than it is so they can get the data. So, so those are some things that they are gathering the data on. If, we've even heard of cases in discipline where part of the process is that another peer will evaluate their peers. And then they provide a feedback to the adults in the school of how if they feel like they're remorseful Did they learn their, I mean, it's like silly. Why is the peer, I mean, I just don't really understand that part. But
Well,
anyways.
I can tell you why. Don't forget the other part of Marxism is to infantilize
Mhm.
all people. I mean, every people, not just the infants, all the people need to be infantilized and
Sure.
drop down. And that's part of the reason why I quit teaching in 2002, is because I could tell everything was becoming student focused. And
Mhm.
once you become student focused, you're now infantilizing everything down to the level of the lowest common denominator. And
Mhm.
that's why they do that kind of thing. There are no adults in the room anymore because we don't have adults, because you can't have an adult if the government is the adult.
Yeah.
If the
Don't
government is the
forget,
problem
if
solver.
the government is the adult, you can't have individual adults. And that's why we're being infantilized in this country, right and left. Why, we're not teaching any children really anything. A lack of knowledge, with a lowering of expectations psychologically, emotionally. It creates infants. And of course, infants can't be adults. So that leaves the government to be the adult. That's the reason why they do a lot of this stuff.
For example, our mayor that wanted to tell all the city workers that you must wear a mask in city buildings.
Mm.
I'm sorry, not your job.
Yeah.
Legally, not her job, but she did it because she likes
Mhm.
to tell people what to do.
Mhm. The important thing for people to remember with all this, though, is all the data that's collected from your children, from you. I mean, just everybody being out and about. It's all contributed to a smart city that they are creating and are likely have already started in your areas. Because we have to have smart education. Like we were talking about earlier, there has to be smart education to prepare these children to function in a smart city. And without that, then they don't have all these people complying with what they're trying to do.
By functioning, you mean obeying.
Yes.
Function and obey. Yes.
Yes. So I just included this just to kind of show more of how they get the data. It starts in the classroom with the students, where the teachers are gathering various data on the students. We hear from quite a few teachers who talk about how just collecting the data alone is a good portion of their job, and that it takes away from
Yeah.
them being able to teach.
Yes.
The professional development things that they have to attend, on a
Yep.
often, pretty often, time frame, that's different from it has been, before, where they have to learn how to collect the data, where it goes, what they do with it, all the things. And then from there, obviously the teachers, it goes to the building principals, and then the building principals obviously forwarded on to the, admin office of the district. And then, from there it goes, into a data cloud, or data system somewhere.
Right.
So,
And often we are like, well, there's good teachers in the schools as well. Well, if you're a good teacher, stop collecting data on students for the tyrants to ruin their
right,
lives.
right.
If you're a good person, good teacher, you need to stop and repent. Nobody likes that word, but just
No, but
decide.
that's exactly correct, Julie. And I will
Mhm.
tell you this, Michael and I were talking the other day. He has gotten some information from a person in a school about something happening in a school. And this person wanted to report it to Michael so that Michael could take care of it, because the person that reported it didn't want to be the one to stand up and report it, and was scared to report it, and was
Mhm.
putting it in Michael's lap so Michael could deal with it. There you
Mhm.
go.
Yep.
What a bunch of stand up. And this was for the benefit of children.
Yeah.
So if
Right.
you're an adult and you can't stand up for children, go away. Do
Yes.
something else. But you're not an adult if you can't stand for children. That person shouldn't have been calling anybody else, not Michael, anybody else. That person should have been standing up, complaining about that, and bringing that up at the time. I'm so tired of the weenies that we have working in every spectrum of the education industry who like to say,
Mhm.
well, I can't say anything. Well, stop it. Stop
Yes.
it.
I
Grow
never
some
thought I
spine
couldn't
and
say
stop
something.
it yourself.
Yes.
Good night. Ugh. Nothing more aggravating than a bunch of big weenies.
True.
Sorry, go ahead.
So I mean, most people are already seeing these changes within their schools. Some have not, but part of these they'll have, software upgrades, new software that they're using on these Chromebooks. Of course, many of the Chromebooks come preloaded,
Yeah.
with programs that they're going to be using for the students, and that they're all highly everything on those Chromebooks is gathering data. We even had a parent tell us that his daughter was using her own laptop and took it to Best Buy because she thought it had a virus on it. And come to find out, the school had been getting on the computer via the Wi-Fi that the daughter was connecting to at the school, and was able to track her on her own personal laptop.
Oh my goodness.
So, needless to say, Dad wasn't too happy about that. And he went to the school
I
about
want you to say that one more time.
it. Sure. There was a high schooler who was using her own laptop, not the one issued by the school. She thought it had a virus, so she took it up to Best Buy for them to look at it, and was told that as she's connecting to the Wi-Fi, that the school is able to still get in there and track her as far as where she's going, where she's at, and all the things, on a laptop that's her own personal laptop, not one issued by the school.
So
Wow.
that begs the question then, and that's something that we need to talk about. And also, Michael just texted and said that they've confronted Edmond Public Schools numerous times about LGBTQ RSTUV stuff that's been put on the Chromebooks that kids are reporting to their parents that's on there. So it's just what you said, about the Chromebooks. The parents don't see what's on there, and if then a kid isn't going to report that home, that they've got stuff on the Chromebook that shouldn't be on there, that parents don't want them exposed to, nobody's going to know about it. But to back up what you were talking about, Dayna, we've got to, as parents, understand technology. That's the other problem when we have, well, a 13-year-old kid can do it, but I don't get it. Well, you know what? You can't save your kids if you're going to do that. If you don't get it, go find somebody to show you. Go to the Apple store, go to wherever. Find a technology person that can show you how to turn off the switches on your computer that prevent the Wi-Fi from getting in and doing anything to your computer, because all of this stuff can be stopped. You just have to be smarter than the own school being paid by our tax dollars to essentially hurt your children.
And these people that are obsessed with children and sex need to get the heck away from our kids.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So just thinking about this, I just always tell people, think about all the things in the classrooms, the Chromebooks, especially the surveys that they give out to our children. And as parents, we get surveys or just general information that they collect from our enrollment forms. If you do free or reduced lunch applications, all those things. So every program that they are using on a Chromebook is gathering information on your child. Every one of them.
And your family.
Yes. By introducing smart educational programs, smart citizens can be educated and trained. See, they want to train them. Digitized education will also help students in contributing towards enhancing the society, and will also encourage them to help the environment. IBM is launching a smart education program via its. So sorry.
Is that the government or a dog?
Those are dogs. So the IBM is launching the smart education program via its Smart Cities agenda. Microsoft has their own that they're introducing as well, the City Next initiative, which promotes an educated cities program. And anytime that they advance the technology, it allows just for easier, quicker access to evaluate their child. Schools believe that it will help weaker students without hindering the ones with potential, giving an equal opportunity for every single student. This will help build students to become active citizens.
Active.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
Activists.
Activists. Yes.
Exactly. Oh, and
Let's
let me
see.
just say this really quick. So, for those of you that are on, and thank you so much for staying on, we're going to continue until we're done. And if you have to get off at the hour, we totally get that. But don't forget that we upload all of our finished podcasts to our Rumble channel and to our YouTube channel. So, please find that, and then you can finish the podcast when you have time. So, thanks for staying with us, and thanks for continuing, Dayna. Thank you.
So I just included a part of an article. Personal data is collected on kids at school all the time, and I'm going to show you how all the ways that they collect data on your child, and some things that you can do to stop that.
Gosh, that article was all the way back in 2017,
2017.
Dayna.
Yes. Yeah. Before COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So initially we talk about, this is some of the ways that they will gather the data. So before your child starts kindergarten, the parents have to provide their personal information, we know, including their name, gender, date of birth, social, any health information, family income information, to see if he qualifies for free or reduced lunches. And then all this information gets uploaded to an online database.
And let me stop right there. Please understand, you are never supposed to give anyone your social security number. The Social Security Administration has said this numerous times. If you go on their website, you are not to use it to get credit. You are not to use it at school. You are not to use it because your phone company tells you they have to have it. You are not to use it for anything other than your retirement. And I think there's one other thing, that stop giving your schools, your healthcare providers, or anybody else your Social Security number. Stop it. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're fine. They, like I say, uploaded this into their online database, which is usually maintained out of state by companies, various companies. I know for us around here, it's Power School.
Yes.
Every place may be the same, may be different. That I'm not sure.
Power School is big.
Yes, they are. They store all this into their cloud. And it's, provided to, school administrators, teachers, parents who have access to a data dashboard. The school will then send much of the information electronically to the State Department of Education through the school in a statewide longitudinal data system. They, this is where they hold all the information, which, may or may not be safe.
But they call it statewide. But one of the things they were putting all the information on a super highway so that information it's probably global.
Yes, and so I actually mapped it out once for one of our, I think it was for the interim study that we did on data collection. I actually mapped it out. So like I said, I'll stick when we, finish this podcast, we'll go ahead and put all of those URLs in there underneath that so that you guys can see those for yourselves when we're finished.
Okay. Just some other ways before your child arrives at school for his first day or any day of the school day, they are being tracked on the school bus. There's tracking on the school bus. There's online lunch account that gets created. Usually, especially in the higher grades, they'll have emails created, for children to use during the school day to communicate with other students or teachers within the school. Some of the schools, I know the high schools do it, where they have ID badges for children that have the RFID chips in them that tracks them throughout their school day. It also lets them in buildings because now they have those locks on the buildings and they have to have the card to get in. So, excuse me. It anytime they
Isn't that another thing that's interesting though too? Because they'll tell you it's for your children's safety. And how many
Yes.
parents, Julia, have we talked to lately who have said, I'm not allowed to see my kid anymore. I can't go in and eat lunch with them because it's a safety issue. So they're going to tell you it's for your child's safety. But then what they're doing with this RFID tracker, what happens if you get into a situation where you can't even get your kid from your school because that child is locked up? So
That's
I'm
called
sorry, I know.
kidnapping.
Yeah, it is. And if you think the schools and these people are above that, you're
They
wrong.
will
And I
do
think
it.
that's the problem that we have is we all have these good intentions and we have these good hearts and we feel like, well, nobody would ever do anything to hurt my child. Or that's the people that run schools today are programmed and they don't see it as hurting children. They see it as helping children. And if they need to get your child away from you because they consider you a problem, they'll do it because they're programmed to believe that they have that is part of their job, is to step in on behalf of the parent and do whatever is needed. So that's where the social credit score comes in. If you're a parent that doesn't believe in the LGBTQRSTUV movement and you're teaching your child a more biblical stance or a biblical stance, and then those people who are working at school, you're harming that child. We need to get that child away from you because they're being harmed. You guys have got to really stop and think about things further than at the end of your nose. You got to think out here, and you got to think about people who are authoritarians, who don't think like you do, but that are becoming in charge of not only your children, but our cities as well.
And I mean, one of the um, places that we went to speak, one of the moms was saying how this was like the first time I had heard that the parents were actually locked out. Yeah. Fortunately, her principal was also there at that meeting, and she said, "Well, for the safety of the kids." And I said, "Really, how many violent crimes have you been convicted of?" And nope, this sweet little mommy had not been convicted of any crimes. I said, "Why are they locking you out then? You're not a danger. Why would they assume and give your children the message that you are a danger? Why would they do that? That is wicked. And why do they lock you out? There is no reason." We used to go in and out of schools all the time, and nothing has changed in most parents. So,
yeah.
Sorry, we keep interrupting you, Dayna.
No,
you're just giving us such great springboards.
I was going to say when the schools believe that they can take the place of the parent, that's called in loco parentis, I believe.
And tell the parents what they can and cannot do.
Yes, and so it's their interpretation of that as far as how much leeway they think they have over a parent. Last time I checked, they didn't support my child or take care of them really, but they think that they have more rights than we do at times. So and so continuing on with this, some schools have a class dojo account. I don't know if this is more like elementary schools that have these or if it's any upper grades, but class dojo is one of the top I'm going to say maybe data collecting devices that's used. They say it's for behavior management. So they use it as like I know when my kids were little, they had like a clothespin or something, and it got switched from red, yellow, green, or what, like green they started out with. And then if they were misbehaving, it got moved down. So this is something similar to that on a digital scale, that this also alerts the entire class if somebody gets a demerit on their profile.
Wow.
There are daily and weekly updates that are sent to, the parents via this app, text, or email, however you decide to set that up. But this is one of the worst ones I've probably heard of as far as the data collecting and the reporting of the information. We've seen it where, you can communicate with teachers on here, but same as you do an email, but they try to do it all through this class dojo. In the cafeteria, some of them, I don't know that any of ours require fingerprints yet, other than like they just put your lunch number in or what they scan to get them, to come up. But it's all a digital thing for when they collect their, for lunch, that says what they got, for that day. Did they purchase anything extra? Sometimes depending on the level of school, they have extra items you can purchase, snacks and drinks and things. I don't really do much with the food part, honestly. My kids take their lunch, so that's way I know what they're eating. And because we have so many reports of not having much food left by the time their kids get to the line, or if your lunch account is in the negative or something, you don't have money that day, they give you this alternative lunch, which is
so they're already enforcing the ESG already in schools.
So it's pretty horrible. I mean, I know I would be very upset if my child was given an alternative lunch because I forgot to send money that day or put money on their account or, whatever it is. The child shouldn't be penalized for that. But, so another way that they collect it is during your gym class. If they wear a heart rate monitor to record the workout, like the Fitbits or the whatever those other ones are that are Samsung or whatever, that record all that information. If those things are connected to Wi-Fi, they can absolutely collect that information.
Wow.
So something to keep in mind if your child wears one of those. If it's a cellular one, then I don't know that it would, they would still connect it to Wi-Fi. I guess they would. My daughter believes that if it's Wi-Fi, she has internet. Even though she has a cell phone that has internet access on it, no matter how many times I tell that child she has internet, she don't have to route the Wi-Fi. She still thinks there's Wi-Fi here. I got to connect. It's something that's been pounded in their heads to believe that they have to connect to Wi-Fi wherever they are. At home and at school, they will receive personalized learning lessons online. It just depends on it. Could be math problems. It could be that they've done within a video game, taking quizzes. They're, after reading a story for profit technology companies. And this goes back to the website textbooks that some of these kids have, where they can refer them to these websites. They take the quiz after the story that they read on there, and who knows what the story is going to be about.
Right.
This is something that the teachers just assign the website in this lesson, and this company is the one that determines the content, the difficulty level of this activity by collecting their data and analyzing everything that the child has placed within this, quiz or information that they were given. We also call that data mining. So,
well, let me just point out this too. So, for all you parents out there who say you can't homeschool, hello. Your kid isn't even really you could do the same thing at home on your own that this program is providing your kids in a school where they're just taking your data. So let that sink in just a few seconds there. Holy cow.
Yes. And then another thing is, even as early as kindergarten anymore, they're taking tests, statewide tests, or they are doing assessments to prepare for these statewide tests that they're given. In grades 3 through 8, they take this annual standardized exam in math and English that's required by federal law. And they're also subject to other periodic assessments that may be given for other subjects that the companies that are asking them or providing these for them to administer are often another way to collect personal information on the students and just gathering more data. If there's essays that are involved, usually in the higher grades, those are scored a little bit differently. But end of the day, it's all about the data. And it could be something as, kids will think that they're just talking about their family and it's just innocent, but then one question leads to another. And then next thing you know, they know, your values, how you vote, where you like to eat, all the things that you think, are really not, that are innocent, but they'll turn into data.
Well, and that's it. I mean, you're exactly right. We see innocence everywhere, and we shouldn't at this point. We should
Mhm.
understand that people are literally after us to conform. So,
Yes,
Right.
yeah,
exactly.
stop assuming. Makes an
Yes,
ass out of you and me.
that's right. So, excuse me. They sometimes it's elementary school. I think it can really be at any level, but they're asked to complete school climate and other surveys measuring their personal beliefs, the political views of either the child and or the family, social and emotional skills. They will often use online accounts with their name or other personal information that's attached to it. Used to, they were on paper, but now most of these are just online because, again, they have Chromebooks. So send them to a website and they can give them all the data. The other, as they progress through elementary and middle schools, obviously their education record continues to grow because it includes their grades, the courses that they've chosen, or just their schedules in general, standardized test scores, any discipline information, anytime they've been to the counseling office, disabilities, if they're on a 504 and an IEP, of course, that's the whole thing in itself is data collection. And any health condition that that requires medication or special treatment at school, those are all things that they feed into these databases, along with family history, racial and ethnic background, your country of birth, whether they're immigrant or homeless, and any other special services that they might receive.
And now they're putting clinics into schools.
Yes. Yes, one of the schools is putting a pediatric clinic in to specifically help with special needs children, but it's only for Medicaid only services if you're on Medicaid. And then I have another district who's putting one in, but they'll service everybody, no matter what your insurance or insurance, what type of insurance you have. So,
And just keep in mind, when you're talking about the kids with disabilities,
mhm.
our medical system through abortion wanted to have parents killing those children before they even had a chance to be born. So
Mhm.
if you think they're for the good of your children, they are not.
Yeah, so when we asked about, parent consent for these clinics, we were told that they would ask for parent permission, but the parent did not have to be there when the child is seen via telehealth visit or be visited by the nurse that's there at that location.
Wow.
The telehealth visits would be obviously with the doctor, but the parent did not have to attend those
Wow.
because
And we
again.
have a mutual friend who did not give them permission to drug test their child, but guess what? They did it anyway.
And part of this is like what we're talking in the beginning was they package these up to look so pretty and so convenient, and they're trying to help you because that's so parents don't have to take off work, so parents don't have to do
Yeah.
this. They premise it like they're being so helpful to you, but really it's just another way for them to take over.
Right.
So it's just something to be mindful of as you hear about these clinics coming into the schools. I have a child in particular who has an extensive medical history. There's no way that somebody else could begin to understand that if I'm not there. And that would probably not do things that I would necessarily agree with, so because they don't know what we've tried, they don't know what works, they don't know what doesn't work. And so there's just, especially when you're dealing with special needs children, I just feel like that's just a very sensitive area that people shouldn't touch because you don't know their history. I mean, sure, you could look at whatever mom wrote down or whatever, but unless the mom is there or you have those medical records, it's really difficult to make a good decision on what's right or wrong for that child. Just my opinion as a parent. But all right. So whenever the child enters sixth grade or even sooner in some districts, they'll implement what they call one-to-one program. And these are devices which are issued to each student that allow companies like Google to track and mine student data, and including internet sites that they've visited, search terms, books, articles online that they've read online, videos watched on YouTube, any passwords, And this device they get each year, now I know this says until they graduate, but at least for ours, they check the Chromebooks out and then you check them back in at the end of the year. And and then they obviously gather so much data just for the one school year, that they think that they'll use to diagnose his learning issues, which again, schools I don't think should be diagnosing children. They're not trained in medical, to be able to do that. If obviously if they're not already being they're not already being seen for something, like it's not already been established by their medical provider. But they are bringing medical providers, mental health professionals, things in our schools to diagnose them. And they're also trying to get teachers to do the same thing who are not medically trained to diagnose children. So,
Wow.
Yeah. Excuse me.
Same thing with their psychological health.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So they'll use all this information to steer them towards certain courses, or career fields, and they'll just generate this profile that they will sell to data brokers. There are third-party entities that buy this data all over the place, and they use it for various reasons. So may or may not have your child's name attached to it. It just depends on the company and what they're exactly buying.
Even if their name isn't attached to it, they can still go back and match it up.
My husband is a computer programmer, and when we started talking about the data collection stuff, a long time ago, over a decade ago, that was one thing that my husband said frequently is there is no such thing as a data eliminated, data. There just isn't. And they can say, well, your child's name isn't attached to this. Anybody who knows anything about computers, and sadly I don't, he does, can figure out a way to attach a child's name to any set of data that was generated by that child. Anybody can do it. So for them to say, no, your child's name isn't attached to this, they may believe that themselves, but they're lying, whether they mean to or not. It's just a bald-faced lie. Your child's name can be associated with any form of data that's out there, period.
And even if their name isn't on it, they can still take some of that data and identify and put pieces together. I mean, like you were just saying, but people have this perception that, like once we give our Chromebooks back, that data is gone. No, it's not. Yeah. It's not.
No, it isn't.
The data never goes away.
No,
in the cloud.
It's always in the cloud. So no matter what they say, it doesn't go away. It's still very much there, and they will continue to use it for whatever reasons they need to. In this case, they'll use them for ESG scores.
Right.
So, all right. So without, I'm going to continue on with this. And without the knowledge or the consent of parents, the school district will share, like depending on the broker that they're, selling this stuff to, it will, shares his name, his course, his grades, his attendance, discipline, standardized test scores, any test scores really. Doesn't have to just be standardized, any test score, and disabilities with private researchers and even the U.S. Department of Education. The study results will never be provided to the child or their families. This is not something, they will never see this. So it's just kind of another way that they're taking the information. That they don't necessarily need, but they're going to gather it anyway. In the middle school, they are encouraged or required to do an online program that it's like surveys, and then will, do personal academic goals, a plan for college. We're seeing that now. I think that has to do with ICAP stuff that we're seeing in the schools. There's a big push on it. Yes.
What is ICAP?
ICAP is part of the testing requirements to prepare them for college. And it helps provide them a direction on what they want to do in college. So this is where they kind of start that push to getting them into college. And, now we're trying to push them like, you don't have to go to college. You can go to VOTEC. But in so many ways, there's a push to go to college, not necessarily
to get everyone in debt.
Well, it's to get everybody in debt and to, if you do college, if you do technology school, they can still track you.
Right.
Yes, exactly. So it's now a requirement is for them to in high school for them to do, and I actually believe they start this in middle school, but it continues on into high school. And excuse me. So in high school, they will register for online courses, and usually there's some apps that they also will have them download as far as their classes go. And it depends on the company. They're all kind of different, and depending on how they collect that and what apps they're going to use. But again, it's just a data collection that they want from these kids to answer their surveys, answer other, any questions that they might have. They're going to have them do on this app. They can use it to advertise their products or programs to parents based off of the data that this child is giving. These children just answer questions that are given to them because sometimes they're told it's required or it's mandatory. At one time, I was one of my children were told if they did not complete these mental health surveys, they were going to be given an extra day of detention. Well, he was already opted out of surveys specific to mental health, but they were still pushing this until I called and, because they said, well, he didn't show up, for detention. I know. I told him not to go because he was already opted out. You guys cannot make him do those things that he's opted out of. So, they acknowledged the opt out, they didn't give any pushback against it, but them following it, that's a whole other story.
And they're going to punish it for it. That's just.
So you got to stay on them. The middle school was great about them when I sent them, but our high school, not so much.
Right.
So, all right. So another way that they get data on children is if they take any AP classes, advanced classes of any kind. When they do if there's a PSAT that they take, or a SAT, ACT, any of those college board, or ACT type classes, it's all to gather their data and to sell it. And then also it helps colleges determine whether or not they want to recruit or admit that person or not, because that data is released to them. Their scores and all that is released out there to them. Excuse me. I know in some of the schools there's there's a push on this that they will use class time to study for these, and then they will use time during the day for them to take these tests during the school day. So, because they really want them to take them. When I was younger, you had to go in like on a Saturday morning and take them. So, but not anymore. When a student is a sophomore or a junior, more of the private information may be shared with military recruiters unless the parents revoke their permission in writing. Regardless, his school may administer the ASVAB, which is another exam that they'll do. This one's specific to the military, and release those results to recruiters. So parents have to say something in writing, whether it's email, you mail it. I don't care. It has to be in writing to your schools that you do not want this information given out. Or there's opt-out forms that you can complete. There's letters that can be sent, and I'll go over some of those here in a minute. But by the time Tommy or any student graduates, his graduation record spans more than 13 years. Each year of school, his district sent much of the information to the statewide longitudinal data system, where it's linked to other state agencies, including departments of health and human services, higher education, corrections, and then passed along to researchers. At any point during his educational career, the data, whether held by the school, state, or federal agencies, researchers, or online vendors, may have been misused, breached, or hacked, damaging his future prospects ways beyond our current imagination. So they're very much going to take this stuff and use it to form your ESG score, use it against you later, even if it was 20 years ago. could be used against you. People change in 20 years. So, if they did something when they were a teenager, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's a prediction of their future. But some of the things that parents can do to protect their child's data is, of course, opt out. Some states have specific forms. Some are very generic. It just depends on which ones you find or that you come across. You can request to inspect your child's education records that are held by the school, the district, or the state. That request does have to be submitted in writing. Again, whether it's email or mail, that's up to you. And I jotted down some questions that I feel like every parent should be asking in regards to these things. Who has access to my child's data? Ask for specific individuals and organizations who might have access. Will the school inform us if there's a breach? When will my child's data be deleted? What specific data does the district collect on my child or my children? Which classroom apps or online programs will my child be using? What information will those vendors be collecting? Is the vendor or contractor allowed to use my child's data for marketing purposes? What are your standards for approval for these programs? Will the vendors be planning to profit from from my child's data? Or for each specific program being used, ask for the purpose of the program, the reason for its inclusion in the curriculum, and evidence of the effectiveness of the programs. There's a list of approved vendors, I believe on a state level, that many of these schools they'll pick from, and they're graded from my understanding. And the higher I know for our district, she said the higher the number, the more likely they are to go with that particular option. Do they look into it any further after that? I don't know. I couldn't get clarification from our district as far as, if that was occurring or not, other than they just go with the highest rated one. So, so these questions will probably put them off a little bit, because they probably don't get asked them very much.
Oh, and then most of them probably don't know the answers to that.
And that too. So,
Point, Jules.
excuse me.
But you know what? Okay, so we are so far over time, and Dayna, you've got to come back. Clearly, I told you I was so excited about this whole topic, but we've got to have you back on, and so that we can do this justice, finishing all of this information out. I knew it was going to be a lot of information and things that we have been invested in for 15 years now. And I so appreciate everything that you've brought to the table. But yes, thank you for putting that. Again, thank you so much for doing this. And we will have this all uploaded, and we will have you back on, because clearly there is so much to discuss in all of this. And we've barely touched the tip of the iceberg. Mm-hmm. And I love you, love your work. I appreciate all that you do for the Moms for Liberty and for parents in general. Most people have no idea what you're already rescuing them from, and I appreciate that.
Well, there were a couple more slides, but if anybody has questions about how to get their kids out, or the letters that I referred to, opt-out forms, my contact information is on the screen. You're welcome to reach out, and I'm happy to help you with those things, especially as you start preparing for the next school year. You probably already completed the enrollment forms for next year. They do slide there's some boxes on the enrollment forms that they do slide some of this information in on, and most parents don't read it. They just check the box. Right. So, and you can't get paper copies of enrollment forms anymore from what I've been told. So at least by our local district, I don't know that's a fact for others, but at least for ours, I was told, no, they're an established student. They can't have paper enrollment forms. So
would it be okay if we put your PowerPoint like on our website or Sure. on our Facebook? Or Jenny, you know more how to do that than I do.
And we'll see if we can't do that. Like I said, I'll add links to the stuff that we've already done too underneath this when we post.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you for having me, ladies. Appreciate it.
Well,
Thank
thanks,
you
Dana,
so
for
much
being
for coming.
on. Yeah, we really appreciate that. And I know we're over time, everybody, and I'm so sorry about that. But Dana really brought to light a bunch of things that Julie and I have been working on for, like Julie said, almost 15 years. And it's just kind of gotten lost in the stream of time. And parents still need to be aware of this. So, again, thanks for being here with us, Dana. And thank you so much for everybody for and joining us today. And, we just really appreciate that. And we will see you again on Friday, which is the 19th. And on Friday, Julia will be out of town, and Michael and I will be talking about all kinds of different things, including how to make a public records request from your school. So we hope you'll stay tuned for that, and that we'll see you on Friday. So thanks again for being with us, and we appreciate it, and have a really great day.